Welcome to the Code of Traditional Archery, brought to you by Primitive Stone Archery and the founder, Grant Richardson.
Welcome to the Code of Traditional Archery podcast. I'm your host, Grant Richardson, and a big shout out to all the new people joining us and a thank you to those who have been supporting us. The Code of Traditional Archery is dedicated to the legacy and heritage of traditional bow hunting and the process of the ethical predator, the silent art of hunting the hard way, an approach that is a journey and a skill set, not a product, but a process. This podcast is available on Amazon, Audible, or wherever you listen in. My next guest shares many of my own thoughts on the heritage and ethics of hunting itself, and we welcome accomplished bow hunter Shane Butnari, an avid traditional bow hunter and naturalist from Ontario, Canada. He has worked in the wildlife biology and conservation field for almost 20 years, and he is a proud dad and husband. His passions around bow hunting include whitetails, family, heritage land, stewardship, ethics, public land access, and woodsmanship skills. And it just so happens that Shane's father was a member of the Ontario Bowhunters Association, while my father was past president on the executive in the 70s. This is episode 30 of the Code of Traditional Archery, and its title is Sons of the OBA. Enjoy. So I want to welcome Shane Butnari to the Code of Traditional Archery podcast, our grassroots edition. And I'm super happy to have Shane on. Why? Because this episode is called Sons of the OBA, which is the Ontario Bowhunters Association, an older organization here in Ontario that actually founded and created our archery and primitive weapon seasons initially, that personally I think have been torn apart, but we can get into that a little bit. So welcome, Shane, and just give us a heads up, give us a little bio rundown of who you are. You got a pretty cool background in fish and wildlife as well there, so not just bow hunting.
So yeah, thanks a lot for having me on, Grant. It's an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate and am quite I really enjoy everything you put out. All of your books, your podcasts. I think when I listened to some of your first podcasts there, I said it was very Aldo Leopold-esque, and I really appreciate how you tie into the natural history side of things and family and ethics and conservation. It just really aligns with a lot of my my feelings and position on things as well. But so really happy to be on. I'm Shane Butnari, from Ontario as well. Grew up in kind of the southwestern part of Ontario. I've been shooting a bow since I can remember. Anyways, my dad was an avid bow hunter, as I'm sure we'll get into. A member of the Ontario Bowhunters Association a long time ago. But yeah, he had a bow in my hand since I can remember, and I mean, it's just been really a core part of my life for as long as I can remember. I guess my sort of educational background ties into it as well. Got a couple diplomas in fish and wildlife, and then a degree in biology as well. I've worked probably, I don't know, over 15, close to 20 years now, in conservation, environmental consulting, working at parks and that, as an ecologist in municipalities, dealing with development applications and trying to save wildlife habitat in that realm of things. And now I'm currently with a conservation authority doing similar type work. We do a lot of wildlife habitat restoration work, and even as we were talking about, a little bit of kind of enforcement for hunting on conservation authority lands and things like that. So yeah, this archery, bow hunting, in the outdoors, it's kind of just been part of my life since as long as I can remember, and I have my dad, I think, to thank for a lot of that. So yeah, pretty blessed. I talk to a lot of people, have gotten into hunting later on, and they say, how lucky I am to have that influence from an early
Mm.
age and that great
Yeah.
mentor and stuff like that. And honestly, if before people say that to me, I don't even really think about it because it's just, that's just how I grew up. It's just kind of who I am, second nature kind of thing. But I look
Yeah.
back on
Yeah.
it when I get that perspective and I think, wow, yeah, I really am lucky that I had the opportunities I did when I was young to be mentored by great hunters. So
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, when I saw your profile one day, I remember I was looking through stuff and I'm like, you're going through things, right? Because you're going through like disappointment, disappointment, disappointment. And it's not, I'm not trying to be, obtuse about folks and what they do. I'm not. But then I'm like, who's this guy? Like, what the hell's going on? And I'm like, oh yeah. So his dad was in the OBA, and I talked to my father about it. He's like, well, isn't that funny? Like that kind of comes down within that realm of what the culture actually is about. Because it's not just about going out and killing something. It's that process. And that's what I think I am trying to do. It's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. I'm trying to talk about process. And it's not about success all the time. It's not all about, you know, um, grip and grins. And it isn't. It very rarely do we actually see the true reality of what actually it is. My grandfather used to ask me when he died when I was very young, but I would go out with my dad and we'd come home and he'd say, well, what did you get besides wet feet and a cold ass? Like, because that was his thing. He did it every time we came home, no matter what. Because he said, like, I came home more empty-handed than I did. But um, in the realm of things like scouting and understanding and preparation of that, you've got a really good handle on something that, I was so obsessed with when I was younger. That's matured me into, I guess, the bow hunter I am now, which is that ability to get in and understand habitat and animal movement on your own. It's not this manufactured is the word I'm looking for that I see now in that production driven industry, right? That industry of you need this, this, and this in order to do this. Like I've got one jacket from one company because I like how it acts as a windbreak, and I've got another pair of pants from another company because I like how they move if I want to shoot from a ground position, which is where I do most of my hunting from. So like I'm interested in hearing about that in relation to weapons efficacy as well. Like, so I'd like to talk a little bit about that. I guess I jumped around a bit because I was like, really excited talking about that because not a lot of people who come into it from your perspective from both sides of that. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, I think so. Sort of from that ecology background.
Yeah, and raised into the culture of it,
Right,
right?
right.
Like to you, it was very normal to go out and start looking at deer tracks in August and September as a kid.
Yes. Yeah.
And a deer track in any time of the year. I remember when I was a kid, I'm like, "There's a deer track. What do you think it was?" Like it was like a unicorn level event for me just
Hmm.
seeing a track. And I think a lot of youth today that are raised on YouTube and influencers and that kind of thing are they're missing that excitement, that part of that primal, you know, Neolithic, Paleolithic, whatever you want to call it, part of our brains that looks down and says, pray.
Yeah.
So what were they doing? Where were they eating? Where were they lying down? Where was this? So we understand that. And of course, it's not as, I guess, necessary to our survival now, of course. But I think the connection to that is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I'm not gonna pretend like I'm the most successful bow hunter out there, but I do okay. I do,
hmm
especially particularly for white-tailed deer. That's my main kind of
Yeah,
game species that I enjoy hunting. But I do get some people asking me, you make some recommendations, give me some tips. How do you do this?
yeah,
How
yeah,
how do you and and they're always a bit surprised, I think, because I don't know if it's the general sort of media that's out there and everybody wants to show, this is how
yeah,
to, this is how you do it, do these steps and you're going to be
yeah,
successful,
yeah,
you know, and that's unfortunately, you type in, for the people especially that are just getting into it, you type that into YouTube or something like that, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first thing hits you get, the first videos that come up are going to be just that, and those are probably the exact videos that they shouldn't be watching and that they should
Yeah,
steer
exactly.
completely away from.
Yes. Yeah.
Because in my opinion, and I swear, I think a lot of people think I'm just sort of telling them lies to blow them off and not give them my true secrets. But I tell them, I say, you know, get yourself a book about the local flora in your area. Learn all of the vegetation that you can in
Sure.
all of the different habitat types that you hunt in your local area. Learn
Yep.
all of the trees. Get yourself a good bird field ID guide. Get
Yeah.
yourself, learn as much as you can about the habitat, the ecosystem that surrounds you, and then you're not limited to these uh this do this step and this step and this step.
Yeah. Right.
You can go into it and you can sort of uh you can go off the cuff and you can sort of flow and you can just enter a natural area that you're going to hunt, a woodlot or something like that. And, it's great to do some scouting beforehand, but a
Mhm.
lot of times I don't have the luxury of doing that. I'll be
Yeah.
hunting a
Sure.
big piece of public a couple hours away from me, and I don't have a lot of time to scout. I mean, I try to get out
Yeah.
when I can, but one of my favorite things to do actually is go to a new piece of property that I've never hunted before, never scouted before,
Yep.
put a stool in my backpack or my saddle and my bow, and I
Yep.
just keep the wind in my face and I walk in the woods,
Yeah.
and I just walk through the woods until I see what I want to see, and I sit down there, and and that's that. It's not, but it's not. It seems simple, but it's that sort of culmination of all those years of experience and knowledge of learning about white-tailed deer and the habitats that they live in. It's all of that experience that comes into
Yeah.
play. But
Yeah.
once you get to a certain point, I feel like you don't have to do those step-by-step
Yeah.
prescription type of things on how to be successful. You can just go in and you can enjoy it and you can have fun.
Yeah.
You can go for a walk through the woods and be still hunting and scouting at the same time,
Yeah. For
and
sure.
and be more successful that way than setting out
Yeah.
a dozen cell cameras and
Exactly.
just going off of
100%.
that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Exactly.
and then the is just spending as much time in the woods as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Get off of YouTube, and even if it's not the spot you can hunt, if you don't have anywhere close, well, uh, you can scout in all the time. Just go to a park where there's some deer close by.
Yeah.
Just follow their trails and just track the animal you can in their habitats. And like I say, once you get to a point, I think hunting becomes a lot more fun because it's no longer stressful. And no, I mean, it's always stressful
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
a sort
Yeah.
of a fun extent, but
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
not stress to do everything perfect and this and that. It's like um, you hear a lot as they progress and get better and try to master a certain art or craft or activity or that. And it's like, the first phase of it is, really, learning step by step. You need to do this, learn the techniques or whatever, learn
Yeah.
kind of the theory behind it, all that kind of stuff. Do as much research as you can, and then you try to uh, sort of apply it. But basically, you progress through, and then a lot of people say, and you forget and just have fun, right? You
Yeah.
can forget all that stuff and you know, just enjoy it. And I think that's a part of hunting that maybe I'm not there yet, but I'm working towards sort of, you know, l letting go of sort of a lot of those preconceived what I think hunting is,
Yeah.
and sort of just
Sure.
going about it my own way, as just I go into the woods same way as I would bird watching or
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
looking to improve my botany skills and identifying plants. Like, to me, it's no different than that. I go into, except I have my bow and I just look for deer sign as I go. And
Yeah.
relates back to weapons proficiency as well,
Yeah.
um, because you're able to, once you build up that experience, you're able to um, get closer to those animals because you've built up your
Yeah.
personal woodsmanship skills.
Sure. Yeah.
So while weapons proficiency is important, all the practice and everything that goes
Yeah.
into it, um, if you're a more skilled hunter by knowing your surroundings, you know, really, I'm not an amazing shot. You don't have to be a great
Mm-hmm.
shot.
Yep.
You know, you have to be proficient with your weapon and you have to put the
Sure.
work in,
Yeah.
especially with a traditional bow. But I don't think I've shot a deer over 10 yards in, I don't know, probably 8 years or something like
Sure.
that
Of
now.
course. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. 100%.
so you do have to be proficient with your weapon, but you know, you don't have to take long shots or anything like that.
No.
You don't have to be this,
100%.
you know, and follow a shot process to a T and hit a, you know, quarter size target at
Yeah.
30
Yeah.
yards. Like
Yeah.
if and this probably plays into the ethics portions of things too, but
Yeah.
if you're only accurate to, you know, between 5 and 10 yards, you know, some people would think that's ridiculous. I can't hunt, but
Yep.
just
Yep.
have the you know, the moral integrity and the ethical background to be able to limit yourself to say, I'm not going to shoot anything over 5 to 10 yards,
Of course.
right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And and yeah, and I think that's particularly important for people that are just getting into it, thinking I need to, you know, shoot for 5 years before I can even, so I can hit something at 30, 35
Of course.
yards.
Yeah. Of
That's
course.
not really necessary sometimes, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, really work on your woodsmanship skills and limit yourself to don't shoot past 8, 10 yards, and you know, you can be very successful if you limit yourself in those respects.
Yeah, 100%. I let our youngest Indy dictate where she sits. So I let her get in ahead of me and I just follow her. And it's funny how kids see things because I'm like, wow, I remember when I saw things like that too. And I guess I take, as you get older, you go through the motions and so and I'm going to speak for myself, you subtly take these things for granted sometimes because you recognize them, but you've seen them so many times before. You're like that. Okay, cool. That's where I'm at. Oh, that's cool. I haven't seen one of those before. But then for her, it's like magic,
Hmm.
right? Like, I mean, like we've had more engagement, like with each other, like watching a barred owl try to catch voles for an hour and a half and miss for an hour and a half. you know,
Yeah, that's
especially
amazing.
the juvenile raptors, as you are aware, right? Like they're still honing their hunting abilities, right?
Hmm.
And like, you know, and laughed at it and like carried
Hmm.
on because we're
Yeah,
like, wow,
yeah.
this is hilarious. And we had one year I flubbed a shot on a really nice little buck, a really fat little buck. And we had seen him a couple times and she nicknamed him Tubby or something like that. She'd given a nickname a couple times. And she's like, like, we really want to get a deer. I'm like, I know, like, oh my God. So um, I flubbed a shot. The limb tip hit the top of the blind and for whatever, anyway, I went right underneath this deer. I got another arrow off, but he wouldn't give me a shot. And so 20 minutes later, three grouse walk in, and Indy's like, Dad, there's grouse out there. She is crazy about grouse. And we've got a really healthy population on our property. And we're careful about how we manage it because we know we don't pick them all off. But she's like, Dad, like, can you get one of those grouse? I'm like, sure. So it's a ridiculous distance. I'm like, oh, now they're so far out. She's like, Dad, just take the shot. And I shoot, and at 12 yards, miss this deer, and everyone's going to laugh, but it happens. It happened. It was a weird angle. I slid over to get a good vital shot and I missed and went under him. But I pinwheel this grouse at like 30 yards,
Yeah,
like with a Zwicky. And of course, you hit him with a Zwicky, it's just like flop. There was nothing. It
yeah.
was like, it looked like someone had just put it on the ground. like, And she looked at me and she's like, and you couldn't do that like an hour ago? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, she's like, couldn't believe it. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I said to her, sweetie, on the way out that night, I said, man, I was overthinking that shot on that animal, that deer. I never do that. I was overthinking it and I was worried about the angle and finally gave me a good angle. And I said, the grouse, I just drew back and shot. It was
Hmm.
just like
Hmm.
that. I said, just remember that. Just don't overthink it, dear. Just let it happen. I go,
Yeah.
look at me. Like, I've been shooting a bow since I was 2.5, 3 years old, and I still, it happens. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
I could have made that shot 100 times, but, and I said, I was also trying to do it for you. She's like, oh, don't use me as an excuse. But it's that relationship that you develop in there, in the woods, in the wilds. And yeah, she's like, Dad, I'm cold. I go, do you want to go home? No. So she's learned that she's not going to, you know, suffer out there. I'm not going to let her suffer, but at the same time, it's okay to be a little uncomfortable. It's okay
Hmm.
to be, out there and connected to that. So, and you're very humble, and I'm not trying to get you to come out with it, but you've killed some very mature bucks at close range on the ground, and that's sort of where that weapons efficacy I was talking about comes into play for me because I had a guy a week ago really going after the Wenzel brothers and one of their old, I think could have been October whitetails, one of the old videos that test was it Stony Wolf put out through Paul
Yeah.
Bruner's production company,
Yeah.
and like he pinwheels this buck at a slow run at like freaking 15 yards, pinwheels it, and this guy was going off. Well, see you traditional guys make bad shots too. I'm like that deer died 10 steps away, dude. I said, that bow he's shooting, do you know how many arrows have come off that bow before it hit that deer? Do you have any idea? We're talking all year round. He's like, oh, I guess I never thought of it that way. It's a perspective, I guess, but like I get ripped into all the time. Well, why do you use a vintage Damon Howell bow? Well, that high speed, like it just sits in my hand.
Hmm.
I've done some really wacky stuff with that bow. And my dad gave it to me. So it's kind of got this mojo thing. Like he
Hmm.
got it from Etar all beat up 20 years ago and gave it to me. I sold it, got it back, refinished it again, and it just happened to become my favorite bow now. It's like a part of me. And
Hmm.
I love what Dave Tetzlaff says. Dave and I have had some great conversations. For those of you who don't know, he's the co-editor of TBM, Traditional Bowhunter magazine. And Dave comes to it from a person who was raised around big cats all his life growing up, right? With, in the ethical zoo industry, so to speak, in captive big game, big cats. And he's also he rehabituates traps bears and relocates bears, black bears, Florida. This is a really unique perspective. And he's like, so I love what he says. He says, I like to say my bow took me there, on those adventures,
Yeah.
whether I was, got something or not. When Indy was in grade 5, I think it was, at the school, there was a merlin nest at the front of the school in a dead birch tree. It had been there for years. And we used to go watch her, when school wasn't on for hours. We would watch her like watching TV, bringing prey back and feeding the babies as they grew up and then teaching them to fly. And then taking prey and moving it further away from the tree and then eventually dropping it for them to go stoop on. And one day one of these teachers comes out and the mother's going nuts because the babies have fledged and she's all agitated. And she's like, oh, this bird's doing this and this blue jay's upset everybody. And Indy looks at her and says, it's not a blue jay. That's actually a bird of prey. They're one of our smallest falcons. That's an accipiter. You see, the wings are tapered. It's not like a broad wing. It's not a this and that. And she really said to Indy, you shouldn't say things like it's a blue jay. Like you're wrong. So the next morning, this teacher comes up to me and I drop Indy off. She's like, "Can I talk to you?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "I owe your daughter an apology because I went back and I looked and I guess it's not a blue jay." And I said, "Well, Indy's watched that female Merlin feed her young blue jays, so that's where all the blue jay feathers were on the ground. That was her point of reference. I missed out saying,
Hmm.
Shane, but I guess my point is like." For Indy, it was nothing. It was just like, well, you don't understand what she's doing. She's teaching them how to hunt.
Yeah.
So, like, for her, it was like a very normal thing. It wasn't this great event, but she understood it on another level. I think that was so cool. But, we're raised in this kind of and I don't want to say it for fear of copywriting, certain company that produces movies that maybe had animals fight each other in order
Hmm.
to sell money and finance movies, and set them up in areas where they couldn't get away from each other and agitated them to a point where, for movie production. And the same people talk about like ethics and animal welfare. I find it hilarious, at the same time, right? Like
Yeah.
there isn't a predator in this world that doesn't wound prey trying to capture it,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. That's the truth.
right? So, I mean, so I appreciate your take on the weapons efficacy because like you shoot all year round and now you've got somebody else in your life to follow you around and
Yeah, yeah,
do
yeah.
that with.
That's yeah, just hearing you talk about your daughter there, yeah, it really it really hits home with me right now. I've got a son that just turned 3 last weekend, and
Yeah.
I surprised him. I built him a nice. I've built quite a few self bows for myself in the past,
Nice. Yeah.
out of Osage and a lot of the local hardwoods, ironwood and hickory and
Yeah. Yeah.
elm and stuff like that. And so I had a piece of elm lying around. It was, uh, not that long of a piece, but it was super, super dense. It was had very, very tight growth rings on it.
Oh,
I knew
nice.
it would make a nice bow. So I was kind of saving that piece, and so yeah, I surprised them, carved them out a nice elm self bow, and I kind of heat treated the limbs so that they
So cool.
yeah, and painted it up kind of nice with a pattern on it and that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
oh, he just I wrapped it up for him on his birthday, and he opened it up, and just the look in his eyes and the look on his face when he opened that up, it was just because with how it is with toddlers, you never know, they could open it
Sure.
up, look at it, and toss it aside and say,
Right. Right.
nothing against you, or they don't mean it to do it to hurt your feelings or anything. It's just toddlers, right?
Sure.
They
Yeah.
look at a present, they toss it aside and on to the next one. But he was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so captivated by it as soon as he opened it, and as it wasn't strung up, and he's like, "Where's the string? How do you string it up? I want to go shoot it,"
That's
And
hilarious.
that's all he wanted to do the next day. He's out there. I'm trying to get him in bed, and he's out there in his underwear and rubber boots shooting shooting the bow as it's getting dark, getting
That's awesome. Right on.
bit by mosquitoes and everything. And actually, just this afternoon, I was at work, and I got a text from my wife, and she said, "Bo, that's my son's name." She said, "Bo just said when you get home from work, he wants to go out. He wants to go out shooting and hiking with you." And so we were out at the
That's
archery, the
great.
3D range, this after work, and he was, yeah, shooting his bow. I got him some arrows that actually can stick into a target, and he's shooting them right at the target. He's doing very, very well for 3 years
That's
old.
amazing.
But I just thought it made me think when I got that text, in the afternoon, saying he wanted to go out hunting. It really puts things, or not out hunting, but out shooting his
Shooting.
bow.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
It just puts things into perspective, and it just makes me realize that, we can talk about all these things, how to be a good hunter, really, I, it all doesn't even matter compared to
Mhm.
that. Like when I got that text, that was better than, honestly, I would rather have that and spend that time in the woods with
Yeah.
him than I
Sure.
would to shoot a 200-inch deer. I like
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not even a question for me.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's, yeah, right there. Yeah, that's what it's all about. I think I get nostalgic about it because I did it with my dad growing up,
Yes. Of
and
course. Yeah.
everything, and
Yeah.
just, watching him.
I think you're back. I think there you're back. You're back now.
Did I skip out there for a
Yeah,
minute?
just glitched a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay. It's all good.
Yeah, it, and you were talking about your bow that kind of had some mojo to it.
Yeah,
I think there's something to be said for shooting the same bow year after year
yeah.
and getting really comfortable and really familiar with it. And I think there's a difference between, you can get a bow and you can get arrows tuned up to everything just through tuning
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
that kind of stuff. But even that, there's something different between that and something and a bow that you've shot for 5, 10 years with the same arrow setup, the same broadhead setup, that where
yeah,
you have a
yeah.
level of confidence that you really can't it's hard to replicate. And the past few years for me, it was happened just locally to find a guy that was selling an old Robertson primal stick.
Oh wow. Yeah. So, oh
Um,
yeah, I've seen you with that. Yes.
yeah, yeah. 66 inches. I think it's 53 at 28.
Yeah.
Um, and Dick Robertson, he's an absolute legend.
Oh
I just
yeah. Yeah,
love
for
the
sure.
guy, and just hearing him
Yeah.
talk and his views on things.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not afraid to speak his mind on
No.
certain things, and just
No.
like I say, just an absolute legend in bow hunting, where he's been all over the world, Alaska, Siberia,
Yeah.
hunting, sheep and just incredible animals. But anyways, and then, one of the people I know both of us look up to, Don Thomas. I know he
Yeah.
shoots,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's shot a Robertson primal stick for a long, long time.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I think Doug Borland, I think he's someone who he hunts with quite often. I
I
think
think isn't Yote Robertson on the cover of one of the books, Don's books, I believe.
oh, really? Yeah,
So
you may be. Yeah.
I believe that could be him on the
One of the
cover.
young, the
Yeah, when
young
he was
kid on
young.
one of his
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe on Longbow
Longbow
Country.
Country. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great
Yeah, I
book.
didn't know that was him, but
I
um,
believe I could be wrong, but I believe it was his
yeah.
son. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, I happened to find this bow, and I sent some photos into Robertson just out of curiosity how old it was and
Yeah.
if they had any records on it. And they said they didn't, but they said it was probably at least 25 years old.
Oh wow.
Um,
Huh.
it's it's pretty beat up when I got it. It had, chipping, some of the finish chipping on it and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just very, very well used, well worn. And I think I'm gonna refinish it before this year.
Yeah.
But anyways, talk about a mojo bow. I don't know if it's because, you know, I don't know if someone lucky shot it before me, or if it's
Right.
just the confidence that I have with it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that bow, I walk into the woods with it and I swear it just feels right in my hand. And every
Yeah.
year that I've had it, like it seems like I can't walk into the woods without running into a big buck,
Sure. Yeah. That's
anywhere I
crazy.
go. And
Yeah. That's incredible.
honestly, it feels like the bow has mojo. But I don't know if it's just the confidence that I've built up with that bow because I've shot it so much since I've had it,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
and I feel so confident with it. And when you have that confidence going into the woods, that translates to more effective hunting, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
For sure.
but it's been, yeah, that bow has been pretty cool. And just tying it back to the weapons proficiency thing, it's shooting that same bow and same setup um, all year round. Like that's the bow I shoot for when I shoot 3D, and
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
it can become really, really familiar and really comfortable with your equipment. And I know I can be bad for jumping around with bows because I get excited about,
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. For sure.
There's so many beautiful bows out there that are a joy to shoot, but it's made a big difference for me, I think, in my confidence.
Yeah.
Shooting
Yeah.
that same bow for quite a few years now. Yeah.
That's why, like, I've like, hunted with nothing but Damon Howell bows. A lot of people are like, why? I'm like, I just connected with. I don't know why. I just
Mhm.
connected with it, and I felt like if I've strayed somewhere else, and I shot a bunch of other really great bows, like really nice bows, but there's something about them, like
Mhm.
they just, you know, I just feel like I'd ruin my whatever that is,
Mhm.
magic,
Mhm.
I guess, so to speak, right? Like I just do. And they brought me back to my memory. I think there was sort of some core memories there too, right? Because back in the day, like I remember the first time I saw a Super Diablo with all of that sapwood on it before it became, a CITES export problem, you know, that Brazilian rosewood. And I remember
Hmm.
like that, what is that bow? I remember sitting across the back of one of my dad's friends' trucks. I'm like, oh my God, that was sick. Like like, can I touch that thing? Like it was just sort of magic.
Yeah.
Whereas the ASLs, like, and you've heard me talk about my dad's, the first one I ever saw was in 77, 78. It was my dad's Big Five he got, and it was a Schultz Big Five by Fort Howard Hill, like back in
Hmm.
that day. And I was like that was a big guy's weapon. From it was like 73 pounds or something. you know, my dad's drawing. She's a left-hander. He's a lefty, so I can't. I've tried, but I can't shoot them. But yeah, he's a massive ASL American semi-longbow guy. He is string follow. Like he's crazy about them. Like he's
Yeah. I've gotten more and more into the simple longbows
yeah,
lately as well. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
My dad's a lefty as well.
Oh, is he really? That's
Yeah.
bizarre. That's
Yeah.
crazy,
Yeah.
eh?
Yeah.
That's funny. I got to tell my dad that. That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And just tying it back to the weapons proficiency thing as well, and just feeling confident and comfortable with your weapon. There's the importance is feeling confident and comfortable and effective. It's not following one
Yeah.
method of doing it.
Right.
There's
Yeah, sure.
which, is kind of can stir some debate, I think,
Hmm.
in the recent years. But I feel like I've tried most of the shooting methods. And I don't know how long ago, probably 15 years ago or something like that. I did a shooting clinic with Rick Welch. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've ever,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, yeah. I think
Yep.
he built some bows for a while too.
Yeah.
Dakota bows, I think they were
Yep.
called.
Yep.
Um, Up in actually kind of Peterborough sort of area.
Hmm.
He was doing Fenland Falls. He was
That's
doing
right. Fenland Falls. Yeah. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
shooting
Exactly.
clinic up there.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that helped. I think it made me a better shot. Um, I've tried,
I like.
follow
I,
Tom Clum and that
yeah.
type of
Yeah.
thing as well, and the
Yeah.
Joel Turners and that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I've tried a lot of different things, and I think I mentioned to you this before, but I still think I was a better shot when I was probably 12 or 13 years old, when I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
have any system whatsoever. I just had the
Sure.
very basics that my dad had showed me, but I
Yep.
just shot every single day. You know, Honestly, dozens to hundreds of arrows like every day. That's just what I
Sure.
did. And I had a I think it was a 58-inch bear grizzly, and it was 60 pounds.
Yeah.
And I was yeah, probably 13, 14 years old, something like that. And I was
Yeah.
shooting 60 pounds, and I don't even think I could shoot 60 pounds now, but I could then, because I was shooting so
Yeah.
often. It was funny. I'd
Sure.
go up to different Boyers booths and that at some of those Compton and Etar rendezvous and stuff, and I'd look through the bows, and I'd grab the 60 pounder, and they'd all be like, "Oh, don't
Yeah.
pull
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
back,"
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
I'd pull it back and hold it for 5 seconds or something, when I
Sure.
was
Yeah.
12 or
Exactly.
13 years old, and they'd be like, "Oh my God." But
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
point is, it's a lot of times it is repetition, and sometimes you do have to, stray from these strict protocols and
For
find what
sure.
works for you.
Yep.
Um, I remember with that same bow, that bear grizzly, I was at a Compton's rendezvous. I don't know how many. It was probably 2005 or six or something like that.
Yep.
Um, and they have something called the turkey shoot there. I don't know
Oh
if they
yeah.
still
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
it, and they set up those clays,
Yep. Yep.
and you got to hit the clays, and if you miss once, I think you're pretty much out, and
Right.
then you keep going until people miss, right?
Yeah.
So and this was for adults and everything, and I was in it at the time, and I remember I made it, you know, hit it every single time, and it came down to two of us. It was myself and another guy. He had a bow company. I think it was Hummingbird Bows.
Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um,
That's oh, the name's evading me right now.
Yeah, and anyways, we ended up the last two in this turkey shoot, and I think he beat me out in the last round. But anyways, I didn't miss that clay for I don't know how many shots, and I don't think I could even do that now. So it's not necessarily about following a strict protocol, although I think they can always help.
Yeah.
It's about being proficient with your weapon by repetition and
Yeah, for
and
sure.
yeah.
Well, for me, it's funny enough. Like what I like about what Rick Welch did, he was big into like if you look at the stuff I do, I give foundation and then I give people the depth to train. To me, it's training. It's just shooting. Like if you want to get good at shooting, I watch my, and I've said this in a couple of podcasts, so I'm being repetitive, but it still blows my mind because it's magic to me. I watched my dad's buddies in New Mexico when the OBA executive get invited down there, shooting doves and teal out of the friggin' air with longbows. Like, like it was nothing. It was just what they did,
Hmm.
And I like what Jeff Kavanaugh says. Like, I've talked to Jeff a few times, and he's like, people came down on me for trying to duck hunt with a bow. There was areas, and I've written about it where I didn't have any other means of using a shotgun inside the town limits except using a bow on a Sunday because I couldn't hunt with a shotgun anyway on a Sunday in those areas. So, and I like what Jeff said, and it really resonated with me. No one told me I couldn't do it,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, I've shot a few ducks with my bow.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, over the years. Yeah.
right. So it's
Yeah.
like for me, it's like, well, okay. And like these guys, to them, it was like nothing. It wasn't a big deal. So I picked apart what I felt were the reasons why the way they shot made them effective. And then I offer that into training methodologies. And I like that sort of what Rick did in some ways as well with
Hmm.
specificity training. Like we talked about like that whole jujitsu diagnostic, that whole jujitsu paradigm of and I use Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Why? Because like I said, like with Mark last week, Mark Sasser, like you can have a strict process as strict as you want, and then you meet somebody with better attributes than you have.
Hmm.
And it comes down to how well your foundation is at that point. There's a lot of parallels to that under pressure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the best BJJ guys I rode with, who I'm not going to name drop today, that I was able to roll with when I was younger, they never hurt me.
Hmm.
But I felt like I was rolling with a gorilla that was being careful with me.
Hmm.
And they never, like, there was no, like, those guys were absent of ego, had been long removed from their, brain to the point because of that. And you know what I'm talking about. So that once they got down on the mat with you, you were rolling where they would have you right on the edge of the cliff the entire time, just right there, hanging by your fingertips. But they would catch you and show you how to you know, escape or create space, or you had to frame a little bit differently from that position. So, it was stuff like that. It wasn't just oh, you're going to seatbelt and attack from the back from here. It was no, let me show you how this worked. And we're going to go through it a few times. And it was a learning experience. And I feel like hunting with a traditional bow puts you into that driver's seat a little bit because you're kind of, you know, going off road in a Toyota Corolla. Like it's that on the edge, going like you talked about going to that new area, I should say, of, exploration, of wanting to, get to know that area by connecting with it. And, you know, um, that's how I let Indy. I let her scout hunt all the time. And if it's 20 minutes, it's 20 minutes. If it's 3 hours, it's 3 hours. And I've learned more in the last, well, 12, 13, 14, 15, 4 years letting her do that. I've learned more watching her again. I'm seeing it through her lens now,
Hmm.
which leads me to the next point, which, I guess because we kind of went around a little bit, but I want to talk about, that conservation and stewardship, which I think is probably one of the biggest things that's absent from that product driven world now. I see a real lack of it anyway. And when I do, it's fairly hollow. It's usually for some sort of end state. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's usually
Hmm.
because of something that wants to be attained. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or look at me, look what I've
Or look what I've
kind of
done.
done. Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
sort of that virtue signal that goes along with that, and I had a guy comment yesterday. He's like, how can you talk about being an ethical predator, with a stick bow? Like scoffed at me and said some pretty crazy stuff. The only way to ethically hunt is with a high-powered rifle these days. I'm like, okay. So like I'm very familiar with weapons platforms due to the nature of my job. So I see people miss all the time on distance shots that are highly trained. So, you know, it's actually, I could talk about the parallels of you taking, stretching that barrel, so to speak, if you know what I'm saying,
Hmm.
like
Hmm. And
instead of, actually getting close enough to ensure that that is going to be effective. But that's the stewardship and conservation that encompasses that hunting ideal, I guess people have. And I think there's part of that culture is has slipped. I think people are trying to get it back a little bit now, you know. But I mean, if you look at a show like Alone, when you got a guy like there's been a handful of real bow hunters on there, and the ones that have been on there have all taken big game, generally speaking, when they've had the opportunity and been pretty competent all around as well. So I'm really interested because like I was showing my daughter photos of everything from the lady slippers which we actually found at my back of my folks' place again this year, which is great.
nice.
But things like that are like a protected species for a reason, right? Um, you'll love this. I'm not getting sidetracked, but it has to do with that connection. Indy yelled at me a week coming home from my parents, Dad, pull over. What? She's like, there's a Blandings crossing the road right there. I was like, oh my God. Like, so I don't want to get in trouble with mom for jumping out on the highway, but there was no cars coming. And we grabbed this Blanding. She had lost the gold rings on her bottom. She was so old underneath. And she was the biggest Blandings and full of eggs. She was just so heavy. So I handed her to Indy and I'm trying to get my Cherokee to pull over to find, I don't want to move her too far away from where she was traveling because she's been probably nesting there for what, 30 years or something. So we got her settled back again. And I was like, that was crazy. She goes, Dad, that was an immense turtle. That was like an ancient turtle. I'm like, I know, right? So I'm not going to keep yapping, but that whole talk we had before we started the podcast about that connection, that hunter connection you have, that unique way of kind of seeing everything, not just that deer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not all
I guess
about
quick.
that, is what yeah,
Right,
just kind
right.
of frame that. Right.
Um, y- yeah, and before I quite get into that, I just want to go back to that because I know the ethics piece is a big part of those
Yeah.
kind of the three pillars of yours there, and I think when you compared the different weapons, the how can you be ethical shooting a stick bow, and you compare that to a high-powered rifle,
Hmm.
I think the weapon doesn't really have anything to do with it, and it's
Hmm.
your own ethics that really guide on whether you're
Hmm.
going to take an ethical shot or harvest or not.
Sure.
Like you said, you can be shooting a high-powered scoped rifle and that's effective to, I don't even know, 500 yards or whatever,
Sure. Yeah.
and you could be shooting at something at 700 yards, right? And to me, that's not really any different than but if you are very confident at 200 yards, if you can hit something the size of a, uh,
Sure. Yeah.
softball at 200 yards,
Yeah.
um, and that's all you stick to, well, then that's great. But you can also, translate that over to shooting a traditional bow and saying, I can hit a softball size target every single time at 10 yards. So
100%. Yeah, for sure.
I'm just not going to shoot past 10 yards. And then you essentially have the same effectiveness between those two weapons. You're
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
you're just, using your own ethics to guide, how you use those weapons, I guess.
That's right. Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Yeah.
and then I guess tying it back into the conservation and stewardship side of things. Um, I think I just read a quote from Don Thomas's most recent book, um, Traditional Bows and Wild Places, I think it's
Yeah,
called.
that's right. Yeah.
And one of the quotes in there, I thought it was fantastic. I like a lot of his writing, but it was something to the effect of um, something about every uh, naturalist. What was it? I'm trying to think here now. A bow hunter. Not something like not every naturalist is a good bow hunter, but every good bow hunter that I've met is a good naturalist, or something like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Um, and I think there's so much truth to that, and I think, unfortunately, I think there's, for some reason, a big divide in what I consider both kind of outdoor or environmental
Yeah.
uh, focus groups, where there's the hunters and the fishermen and the that side of things, and then there's the sort of the naturalist groups, the ecologists, the environmentalists, the
Right.
naturalists, and stuff like that. And there's a lot of times I feel like kind of butting heads of those two groups, and I
Yeah.
find that really, really unfortunate.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
don't understand it, because I think I'm probably just as much. I'm half, hardcore bow hunter, and I'm also half, uh, ecologist and naturalist
Of
and bird
course. Yeah.
watcher and botanist,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
to me, they just merge together so well.
Yeah.
Those two different sort of outdoor, disciplines, but often have very different viewpoints on things. And I never understood it. I think they're just so, like, the better ecologist, the better naturalist you can be, the better hunter you're going to be.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and another thing is, you know, as hunters, I mean, we do a lot of great work, but I think there's certain times where we kind of give ourselves a pat on the back a little bit, too
Sure.
frequently, or
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, a lot of people say, well, I bought my tag for the year, so I'm a conservationist. I'm a hunter
Right.
because I bought my tag
Sure.
for the year. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
well,
I know
you were
what you mean.
forced to do that. You couldn't hunt if you didn't buy that
That's right.
tag. That's not an
That's right.
excuse to say you're a conservationist. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, it goes much, much more beyond that.
Sure.
And it's things, to me, it's things like, are you out there volunteering with some of those
That's right.
naturalist groups that are going out and improving wildlife habitat on the public lands that you hunt? Are you cleaning up the garbage in the ditch that the last hunter left behind? Because
Exactly. Yeah.
some of the best people, I always say this, some of the best people I've ever met in my life are hunters, and honestly, some of the worst people I've ever met in my life are hunters.
Yep. Yep.
And we're both using the same spaces, and
Yep. Yep.
you see
100%.
what they leave behind. So do you you know, pick up trash in the ditch, in the areas you hunt? Do you uh, have, even if you live in an urban area, you just have a small backyard. Do you know, do some habitat restoration in your own yard? Do you
I
plant
know. Yeah.
native pollinator species? Do you
That's right.
create wildlife habitat in your own yard? Do you put up, an owl box or a bat box in your yard?
Yeah.
If you have kids, educate your kids or your neighbors or something on some ecology and stuff like that. Like, and I think a lot of times too, we as hunters, we focus on game species because that's our interest.
That's
But the
right.
reality is, white-tailed deer populations throughout most of their range are doing quite well. Like, they
Right.
don't
Yeah.
really need our help. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're self-sustaining populations that are doing quite well. And in a lot of areas, they need to actually remove a lot from the population because there's
Right.
so
Sure.
many.
Yep.
Not necessarily in our case in Ontario, I don't think, but I guess what my point is, there's so much focus on that, but not that much focus on things that do really require our work and our management efforts in order to
Right.
improve their populations, the species at risk, the things that, you know, the snakes. Like, almost every
Right.
one of our snakes in Ontario is a species at risk because of,
Right.
habitat loss and
Right. Yep.
road mortalities and things like that. And like you were talking about turtles, almost every single one of our turtle species are at
Yep.
risk due to the same reasons. And it's not just about focusing on the white-tailed deer, and
Yep. Yep.
you know, I've seen so many cases where people have ruined like such nice, beautiful habitat to put in like a food plot or something
Right.
like that. And they think
Right.
to them though, that's doing conservation work, right? And me, I look at that and think, oh my God, you just got rid of like all this beautiful native species and what was probably a good forage area for deer and bedding for deer and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
sure,
100%.
they'll eat the food and the food plots, but to me, that's sort of missing the point. It's just very narrow-minded, and when you're talking about conservation, it's very broad, and one perspective that I always enjoy reading is Aldo Leopold, and
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
really well-known book is uh, Sand County Almanac, and it
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
equally goes into the natural history and the ecology of things. But he was also an avid hunter,
Oh, yeah.
and and I feel like he got it. He understood, and those are the kind of people, the influences that I look towards to say, what can I do to positively influence conservation or land stewardship. Look to people like that, and take on some of those projects on your own.
I had a fella a couple years ago, and I quoted in my second book, and I don't say who it is. He's a very big influencer, and said, I complimented, like I love seeing other species. And he had shot a beautiful Merriam's bird, this beautiful bird. And I said, oh, that's a beautiful bird. And he's like, it's just a bird, dude. And I was like losing my mind. Like, well, I said to him, I wrote him back. I said, it's not just a bird when you spent hundreds of hours finding suitable habitat to try to reestablish a population, to, when you really find out about how resilient a turkey has to be. And old Tom is maybe 2 years old, 3 years old. Like, come on, like these are incredible birds when you think about it. I've seen turkeys do some crazy stuff. I've seen them eat snakes. I've seen them turn
Yeah.
logs
Oh yeah.
over looking for
Yeah.
salamanders. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, like for me, like my daughter and I, we spent 3 Augusts on our ridge on our place. It's a small ridge. Like cutting out the white pine plantation the M&R had paid my dad to plant there 20 years ago, which has now made the soil so damn acidic it's killed most of the fruit trees and mass trees off. And we slowly brought that back. It took oh, like 4 weeks of hours of work cutting it through there. And now we've got them nesting in there again when it was a transitory area before. So I think it's important. Like if you look at people talk about deer habitat, and my father was raised as he was an anthropologist by training and trade, and he was very interested in those indigenous populations and their hunting methods and all that. So he got
Mhm.
really into that because he was researching it too. And the one thing, like he said, a lot of people forget, you know, corn is very new world here. And if you look at like, I mean, and even Indy said it years ago, like to this one guy, well, where do you find to go with the deer with your dad, little girl? And she's like, well, wherever there's browse, their deer will be there. And most of our deer are swamp deer. He's like, what are you talking about? Well, look at their Latin name. Like, come on. They love wetlands. And I think I'm sure you deal with it in the Conservation Authority, like protecting riparian habitat. Like they tried bringing ringnecks back and they put ringnecks that were wild ringnecks back in habitat, and 50% of the habitat had no riparian habitat near it. And any pheasant population that I ever hunted that was wild and established had a marsh nearby. Every one of them did, whether it was potholes or marsh, because they needed it to survive the winter. Like it was very simple. There wasn't, like it's not, I think we are doing a disservice to our kids and even, I guess, new hunters or ecologists by misinforming them about strategies for an end state that could be found if they just connected a little bit more with their environment and understood it a little bit better.
Right.
I mean, you know, uh, it's just something that's lacking,
Yeah,
these
yeah,
days.
no, totally,
You
totally.
know,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, I think part of it, I mean, I'll tie it into this just because it's something that I've felt more strongly about in recent years, but things like the added technology in hunting and you know there's some great tools out there, but I often think that you're losing more than you're gaining
yes,
by if you're not taking being responsible and taking on, the additional education in the field that you should be doing.
yeah,
If you skip that portion of it and you rely too much on the technology, on the trail cameras and
hmm
stuff like
hmm
that,
hmm
um, you can end up, digging yourself a hole where you rely too much on them, and then,
yeah,
one day they're gone, and how are you don't have the woodsmanship skills to
right,
be able to hunt without them.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and I don't know how it is in your areas. I hunt pretty much all public land
hmm It may
around
as well
here.
be where we are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, that's unfortunate, but
yeah,
uh,
it's
it,
the way it's the way it is. They're very pressured,
yeah,
very,
right, right.
very, very pressured. Yeah.
Okay, I see what
If
you're saying.
you want to use I guess an industry term,
Yeah, yeah,
because whitetails they always act like they're pressured, but
yeah.
I mean
Um,
it is what it is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, but in the past few years, I think personally, it's just gotten a bit ridiculous how many trail cameras I'll encounter,
Sure.
on a single day walking through the woods on public land, whether I'm scouting or hunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm to the point where, like, I got rid of I had a few. I never used them too heavily, but I had a
hmm
few, not cell cameras, some cheap ones that I got, and I'd put them
Yeah.
out in whatever, in the summer, July or something like that, and then I'd pick them up, the next year when I was out, looking for shed antlers or something like that out in
hmm
March. I'd pick it up in March, and I'd just go through all the photos from almost a whole year, half a year or something, just to
Yeah.
give me an
Yeah.
idea of kind of what's in the area, but never
Yeah.
really used them to actually, pattern a deer and
Sure.
kill one that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyways, I never felt really right using them. It was sort of beyond my ethical boundary, I think, how just using that technology
Sure.
to,
Yeah.
um, to aid in my hunting. So, which is a personal choice, but I just didn't feel that comfortable with it. So I got rid of them. Um, I haven't used one in quite a few years now, but like I said, I go out hunting on a piece of public land, and it's not uncommon for me to come across, five, six, seven, eight trail cameras, walking a couple kilometers through
Wow.
through a piece of public. And
Sure.
it's to the point where I feel, honestly, I almost feel uncomfortable, taking a pee in
It's
the woods
weird.
because I don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
if I'm
Yeah.
going to be on camera or not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, and
For
to me,
sure.
that's just that's not why I go into the woods. I don't go
No.
into the woods to be on camera and taking
Yeah.
videos and cameras of me. I go there to be on my own, and for the solitude, and for um the sense of sort of wilderness and exploration that I get from it, whether it's a spot that's that remote or not. You go into the woods to get that feeling. And
Yeah.
when I'm going through and I see trail, like, it completely ruins my experience in the woods, to be
Yeah. I can
perfectly
see that.
honest.
Yep.
And I would be completely happy if trail cameras were banned on public lands in
Sure.
in in
Yeah.
Ontario.
Yep.
That would be my preference, and I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't be happy with that. But yeah, it's to the point where it's gotten that bad,
Out of hand. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. Sure.
and I think that sort of, yeah, t ties back into the ethics side of things, but also conservation and stewardship and just understanding, like I said, the places that you hunt and being a good ecologist and using your woodsmanship skills and things like that, and not relying on technology, but
Yeah, there's our one camera has now become a trespassing surveillance tool. That's
yeah, yeah,
how ridiculous it got. You know,
yeah,
we have dogs run through our two of our best bedding areas routinely on intentionally, I'm sure, last year. So when you drive 50 minutes or more, get up early, get out, sneak in, try to be careful, and you've got a young one with you, you get kind of protective of that
hmm
because, and it's like, especially when you're with them, and you're wondering if what are they hunting next to us with, are they with rifles over there? Or are they with what were they doing? Do they know we're here? Kind of it weighs on your mind a little bit, right? There was remember that fellow there outside of, it was a Kawartha, I think, that was shot several years ago hunting with a longbow by a guy right off the road with
Really?
306.
Yeah, I don't think I heard that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I'll find the article there at some
Yeah.
point, but he was, the guy pulled up in his truck on the road and hauled out the 306 and shot, and the antlers stayed there, and the rest of the animal fell down, and he had a longbow. He was hunting out through there. So, yeah. And he was right within his rights. He didn't require blaze orange. Like he was within his rights to be there where he was on private property. So, you know, unfortunately, these things happen. So, but I hear you. I think that, the way I see it anyway, I mean, getting back to that comment, it's just a bird, dude. Well, the bird was being sold for likes and shares and follows. That's what, like,
Yeah.
I would like to know, where do they roost in the Western United States? Are they I'm sure they're in big pines. Like I had some questions I was interested in. What are they eating down where you are? Like what I'm really interested in knowing more about the species than in the where they reside, right? Like I said in our community, yeah, I'm going to have a thing put up, but it's going to be if you want to put up something, I want to know where you are and how the animal's habitat is there. I want it to be educational. I don't want it to be
Yeah.
just you know, a
Yeah. And
look what I did.
yeah, yeah. And going back to that and with YouTube and all these outlets for putting hunting videos up and the potential benefits that you can get from those the financial gains especially
Hmm.
um that's gotten to a point where yeah it just has a very we're walking a very fine line there I think
Yeah.
where I enjoy watching the odd hunting video. It's usually some of the older ones, like you said, bow hunting October whitetails or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. I'll go back to those and watch them every year or something. But any of the newer stuff, I don't know, I can't really stomach it because I just even if it's not done, for the wrong reasons, I just can't really get that out of my mind that, you know, this is, killing animals for profit. You know what I mean? For the
Yes.
financial gains
Yes.
and it doesn't
100%.
feel right to me. And I'm probably going to, have a lot of people that will disagree and may not like me for saying some of these comments, but I had a camera, a nice like DSLR camera that I was going to use to film some hunts, and I had gotten a tripod arm to put in the tree to,
Yeah. Yeah.
to film the
Sure.
hunts. I thought, oh, that'd be kind of cool, and this was quite a while ago now, and I not once could I not once could I bring that camera out in the field with me
Right. Yeah.
to hunt
Yeah.
with it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, sure, part of it was because it was a bit of a pain to haul out and set up and all that kind of stuff, but that wasn't most of it. Most of it was I just I don't think I would ever feel right about filming, me hunting and killing that animal because
Sure.
I just feel it's such a it's such a personal thing to me. You know what I mean? It's such a personal thing between myself and the animal. It's such a sacred thing,
Yeah,
filming it and putting it up out for to the public. I could never stomach doing it. And again, I know a lot of people do it. I know a lot of great hunters do it. I know there's great people in the sport that film their hunts and make videos and all that kind of stuff. And
sure.
I'm not saying anything bad about that. I'm just saying myself personally, I couldn't do that because I didn't feel right about putting that on film and sharing it when it's such a intense and emotional and
Sure.
private moment,
And
you know
private
what I mean,
moment,
for me
exactly.
between me and the animal.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, yeah, again, it's personal kind of preference, but yeah, and any kind of, gain, monetary gain you get from producing those videos just would never feel right to me. I don't know.
I caught some flack last year because I would show, like, I put up videos. I was one of the only areas I can tree stand hunt. There's a massive red squirrel population, and I get a kick out of them. I think it's hilarious. And they tell me a lot about what's going on,
Yeah,
whether they like me there or not. They tell me about other things that are coming down the trail, like the fisher with her two kits that she had that year fighting over stuff. Way ahead of time, I know that that fisher's coming. I'm like, oh, I'll bet you that's that fisher again. And sure enough. So I filmed this red squirrel just harassing me for like an hour above my head. People are like, do you show any pictures of you shooting any deer or just the squirrels? I'm like, well, the problem is this is the truth. Most of the time here in Ontario, because of the real estate we have, our deer herd covers is like a lot of real estate. Um, you know, you could see two deer a week if you're lucky in some
yeah.
area, like if you're lucky.
That's how it is down. Yeah, that's
Right.
how it is in a lot of areas that I hunt. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to appreciate the red squirrel losing his mind 2 feet above my head and as he gets closer, and the relationship I developed with him over the last 3.5 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's, you know, instead I got, I'd you shoot the little bastard. Oh, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
sure. There you go. Well,
Yeah.
that's actually, a chargeable offense without a fur bearing license in
Yeah.
Ontario, dude.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, oh, well, that's stupid law. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're just going to take that life and just let it lie there for
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
you know, what's the rationale? But what's your so what? You know?
Yeah. I can see our viewpoints align quite quite closely on a lot of
Yeah,
things.
yeah. Well,
It's
it's failure. Like it's failure. For me, I've learned more from failure than anything. And that goes right back to jujitsu, to any of the hard things that's made me a better person. It wasn't success that drove me there as much
yeah.
as, you know,
Yeah.
not
So
being
what are the
successful.
the deer populations like in your area?
It depends. We have two big we have agricultural, which I found when I had to just hunt it, I found it really easy
Hmm.
compared to the swamps
Hmm.
because they can go wherever they want in the swamps, as you know. So, like the agricultural area, I had to hunt here in Ottawa Carleton, and I told a little brief. It's in the one story. I had 3 days to hunt this property in between the two shotgun seasons that open and closed in that area. And my wife got me permission and on this property of a coworker, and I went in and I'm like, looked at where they'd put their tree stands up, and within an hour, I'd figured out where I wanted to sit. And the next morning, I walked out and like I took this the biggest body deer I've ever taken in my life. I couldn't hardly get him out myself, and the landowner ran right into a tree when he walked into a tree when I saw that animal. It was hilarious, but I mean, I found that very easy for me. It was very simple. Like, well, they're coming out of the soybean field here. Their bedding area is here. If I sit on one of these 2 points, I'm going to see a deer in the next 5 days, and it was very quick.
Hmm.
But I think where I was used to swamp, cedars,
Yeah.
wet, dark, and I prefer that because it's kind of like a fantasy movie, kind of going into
That's
that
that's
type
what
of
I've
environment.
kind of fallen in love with, hunting swamps and
Yeah,
see particularly cedar and hemlock and
yeah,
yellow birch and that type of
that's
thing. It's
right,
just
eh? And what I love about that
beautiful.
is nobody else wants to go there.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, yeah,
nobody else wants to
exactly.
go into that.
Yeah.
So, that's sort of where Indy's cut her teeth, I guess, so to speak. My youngest, or all my kids follow me around, but
Yeah.
it's in that, And you never know what's going to come out of it. Like that's the
Yeah,
cool
yeah,
thing, right?
yeah. Here's some sloshing through the
Yeah,
swamp and some
exactly.
sticks breaking, and it's
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
oh, your heart gets pumping, and you don't know what's going to come
that's
out.
right.
But
So it's
yeah, there's
kind of
nothing
cool.
quite like that. Half covered in
That's
black
right.
muck up past
Yeah,
their elbows,
yeah,
shoulders,
yeah.
and yeah, that's
Well, the one I
yeah.
wrote about the legend, that was a powerful moment when I found his skeleton in the book, and it was in the podcast too, and I wrote about in the book. But like I sat down with that deer looking for two grouse arrows I'd lost. I emptied my quiver at these freaking grouse one day, didn't touch any of them, running around ahead of me, and I went back, and there he was lying in his bed. He died that winter, and like they aged him at almost 11, give or
Wow,
take.
wow,
And
yeah.
he, I sat down with the skeleton, and a lot of people are like, "Did you really talk to him?" I'm like, "Yeah, for like an hour and a
Hmm.
half, probably."
Yeah.
Like he died in that winter, that final winter. I don't know. It was you that I sent a picture of to somebody of his the last time I saw him because we had a couple people poaching that winter, and we put up a camera, and he came across that run, and he looked like he'd been injured somehow. His back was kind of concave behind his a little bit. There was
Hmm.
a weird bump above his hip. I don't know what happened to him, but could have contributed. Maybe it was just an injury from a fight. His tine had broken off that year. He lost a tine. So he was losing that calcium that he was losing that efficacy in his antlers and stuff. They were getting. So he had a rough year the last year he was alive,
Hmm.
you know. So
Yeah, I guess the reason I ask about the deer
yeah,
populations is I don't know if it's the timing of our gun seasons in Ontario. They
yeah.
coincide with right sort of in the peak of the rut, and I know a lot of big deer get shot then that
So
otherwise
we're
wouldn't.
2 weeks rifle now for the last 16 years here, 17
Wow.
years.
Yeah, and
2 weeks
that's what
straight.
for 2 weeks
20 years now, actually,
or,
maybe.
or first 2 weeks of November or around
Yeah.
that time period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah, and
we're
that's
dogs and everything still by our place,
wow.
where
Yeah.
everything goes by our place.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I think Ontario has some like incredible opportunities to produce,
Yeah.
great deer, both,
Yeah.
size and numbers,
For sure.
if they were just managed a little bit better. But I'm always amazed at how few deer I see, honestly. Like when I look around, it seems like there's great habitat everywhere. I've traveled to other places in the Midwest, sort of in the United States and
Yeah.
Michigan, and you drive through and it's just incredible how many deer you see. You just see, herds herds of deer
Yeah.
out
It's
in the
it's
fields.
crazy.
The
It's
sides of the
crazy.
roads are just littered with road-killed
Bodies.
deer,
I
and they're
know. I
just
know.
everywhere. And I mean, Michigan in particular has one of the highest hunting populations. It's very,
Yeah.
very pressured as far as hunting goes, and it still seems like they produce way more numbers of deer at least than we
Sure.
do here in Ontario. And I never
Yeah.
really understood why. But uh, I guess I'm just trying to say, I'm always surprised at how difficult the hunting is in Ontario, and I don't know if I just, from my perspective, whether I'm just not a very good hunter, or if you, if you,
No. Well, I
you know,
always like to say this, like, and I had a polite argument with a fellow last year about this real quick, and
Mhm.
this sort of some of our final thoughts.
Yeah.
And I said, look, like, I'm not going to tell you how many deer I've taken with a bow since I was able to start legally hunting. But the one year I hunted a certain state, it took me an hour and a half the first morning we were there. Like, it was not the same.
Mhm.
That deer I took was a mature buck. It was a 3-year-old, 3.5-year-old buck that weighed 155, 160 pounds intact. Whereas that's an average doe in Ontario.
Mhm.
So mature doe. So like, let's talk about that. So you're talking about that northern climate, larger bodied,
Mhm.
genetically. But I said, like, you need to understand that most of our deer survive literally on browse. Like, it's
Mhm.
not corn, it's not monoculture. And you and I talked about that briefly a year or two ago when you put up that thing about our native grasses. People
Mhm.
don't understand how critical that is. And I talked to a guy that was part of the Bob White restoration there that they were
Yeah.
doing on Walpole and that. I'm
Oh
like,
yeah. Yeah.
listen, I'm gonna help you out here. You keep hectares of native prairie or native Ontario wild grasslands in those areas that were, you know, indicative of those habitats when Bob White thrived. Because, I mean, my grandfather talked about hunting wild Bob White, hundreds of coveys all over from Welland all the way up there,
Mm-hmm.
like hundreds of them. And I said, I've seen Hungarian partridge where I was raised go from massive populations to pockets of concentrations because of corn monoculture
Mm-hmm.
and cutting all the way into their nesting habitat so that they can use every square inch of that field for production. Like, and I've seen like entire populations be wiped out literally from farming practices.
Yeah.
So, and of course, every riparian habitat next to those gets drained.
Yeah.
And then you've now set up failure for that entire population of whatever you have there that have thrived in there. So I think for Ontario, like, I think it's just part of our real estate. Like, if you look at some of the, like our areas, I'm not sure about where you are, but they're like, as well, like where we were, from an ecological point of view, thousands of years ago, where a bulk of Ontario was an inland sea. So you have these massive swamps connected to what were, the Rita River was just another tributary of the Great Lakes at one point. It wasn't like, I think people forget where the land was before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they'd understand why it is the way it is if they connected with that, like the drumlins outside of Peterborough and things like that from the Ice Age. So, like for us, the areas we hunt, if you looked on a top map and blasted it out, if you drew a circle, and I showed this to Indy a few years ago, it looks like an inland sea if you draw an arrow all around it or a line all around it. It's just now left to a swamp. And some years it's wetter than other years. Some years we've had to wade in up to our knees to get in to hunt, whereas other years, depending on the rain, and of course our whitetails get slammed by snow at times down near us anyway. We're in a bad snow belt.
Yeah, I hunt a lot of swamps as well, and I'm a little further south than you and into more development and agricultural areas and things like that.
Yeah.
But honestly, the unfortunate reason I've come to love hunting in swamps, but I've come to the realization that it's kind of unfortunate that those are pretty much the only natural areas that we have left in southern Ontario, southwestern Ontario, because every other area is either, agriculture or developed. And, it's the reason I'm frequently hunting in swamps is because those are the only areas that can't be turned into a farm field or developed. And because literally almost every square foot of everything else has been to this point. And it's kind of a sad story, but it's those are kind of the only natural remnants that are left behind are swamps. And that's sort of why I think I've come to love them, because I've spent so much time in them, and
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I know areas within 3.5-4 hours of me that I can hunt wild ringneck still. And so when we go in there, like we have a 1 bird or 2 bird limit if we go in there, if we're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the best areas I hunted, and it's like a brook trout stream. You just won't tell anyone if you find one. You know what I mean? Kind of like, it's kind of like that magic area. And the funny thing is that like that, I wrote about it in my book. That is now a housing development and a golf course.
Yeah.
And the brook trout are gone. It's now a sewage run, septic stream and runoff. And the cold, like the springs are no longer there. They've all been dug up and filled in. But, one guy said, well, at the back end of the golf course, I keep seeing these funny birds. I'm like, oh yeah, you'll probably see them around the ponds. Yeah, they're always around the water at the back end. We hate that part of the course. Well, that's where they drained all the overflow water from that into that whole back end area. And that's the only place these birds are. Like, if you only knew, I thought they'd survived since the 1900s in that area. and they're still clinging on there, on a golf course in this day and age, where it's just too rough for them to go in and cut or clean out or whatever. Those
Yeah.
birds are still running around there. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
not even native species, right? They're introduced that have adapted to that habitat. I find that incredible. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so, well, I really appreciate you being on. I've had a great talk with you. I'll probably talk to you all night, but
Yeah, yeah, I think we could talk a lot longer.
yeah, for sure.
But
So
well,
I
I think
appreciate,
just to tie it back, sorry to
of
interrupt
course.
you there,
No,
just
no,
tie it
no, of
back to the
course.
OBA and that. I know we kind of got kind of off track, but
Yeah,
you had sent me, and that's kind of maybe how we originally got talking about it, but you had sent me some,
yeah.
um, what are they? The sort of the
They were their rule,
guidelines
kind
or
of their
the
rules and
rules of
guidelines.
ethics. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
they were really great. And I wish I had them sort of in front of me, but, or maybe you could share them to everybody that's interested. But I
yeah.
was really struck by how, um, how well thought out that was, and how ethics and conservation and heritage and integrity were sort of the highlights
Yeah.
of those
Yes.
points, and how
100%.
we have started to, I think, lose that over time. And
Hmm.
I think it's great to look back at our bow hunting heritage and realize where it came from and what people stood for when they were creating these seasons,
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
beginning. And yeah, they're just very, I don't know, they seemed very, pointed in the right direction, point new hunters in the right direction, point every hunter in the right direction, live by this sort of code.
Code.
And
Yeah. 100%.
it was a code of, yeah, integrity and honesty and ethics, and being it really tied into being a good person as well.
Sure. Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
those things, they should be focused more today. But I think they're almost more, yeah, just as applicable today as they were, that many years ago. And I would love to see, you know, something like that sort of revitalized, I guess.
I remember, my last point before I let you, before I wrap up, I remember a deer being taken in the Ferguson Forest Nursery, which is one of the first archery only areas in Ontario. It was archery only. And, you know, that deer was celebrated. It was like everybody was there. Everybody wanted to know, everything, not just about how it died. It was the whole experience. And I think we need to stop celebrating the death of that animal and celebrate its life within the context of taking it
Yeah.
for food, right?
Yeah.
And that's my take on it. That's where my kind of drive goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I harvest a nice animal out of a swamp or something like that, and there is just as much of me that is, sad and and almost
Mm-hmm.
a tinge of regret, just knowing that that animal will no longer be out there.
Yeah. Yep.
Of course, I'm very happy to harvest the animal and have the meat and everything like that, but um, you can't get away from the fact that, yeah, you've taken that animal out of that habitat, out of that ecosystem, and it's never coming back. And
That's
it
right.
almost feels like there's I wrote a little story on my Instagram about an encounter I had with a large buck, and it
Yeah.
smelled me and
Yeah.
took off. And
Yeah.
I was almost there was almost a sense of relief, and I was glad that that animal was still out there to chase another day, because that's what it's
Sure.
about. That's what it's all
Yeah.
about. Um, and just as, some leaving thoughts, sort of, you know, I think there's a lot of great influences out there now with social media and everything else, but there's also a lot of bad ones, and new hunters getting into the sport. Don't look at the most popular people. Search out the
Yeah.
ones that,
Yeah. Yeah.
the guys like Don Thomas and
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
I don't know if you know about much about Bart Schlayer and
Yeah. Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
those guys, like, um, you know point towards people with that high sort of moral integrity, and I think you'll just get a lot more out of your experience hunting, I think.
And at the same time, relate to those people when you find your own way of doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you relate to them.
Yeah.
So
It's
cool.
it's family, it's conservation, it's ethics, it's building you into a better person. I mean, the more I bow hunt and the older I get, the more I realize that's what it's about. And it's not shooting the biggest deer in the woods
Hmm.
and having everybody, putting it on social media and everybody saying congratulations. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so far sort of from where I get the most satisfaction out of bow hunting that
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Shane. Thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Want to have you on here for the longest. So yeah, man, we'll have to do it again some point.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure we'll chat again soon. And that's something that I really think we need, and I think that would be great. Is there's not that many traditional bow hunters in Ontario, especially
Yeah,
diehard ones that have similar values to us. And I think it would be
that's right.
awesome to have. It's always hard with logistics and schedules, but
That's right.
a camp or something like that where
Yeah,
we can,
exactly. Yeah.
like-minded people in Ontario can get together for a few days,
Yes.
a week, whatever, hunt camp type of thing where we can all
Yeah.
wander ourselves onto a big piece of public land and just
Yes.
tell stories at the end of the day. I think
Yeah,
that would
that's
be
a
awesome if could ever pull that off. But
well, they did back in the day. We'll have to try to work that out.
yeah,
100%. Yeah.
definitely.
That's how the OBA was formed. It was formed on a moose hunt with 4 guys
Oh yeah.
in the early 70s. Yep. Yep.
Awesome.
It was
Yeah.
awesome. Under
Okay.
black flies, rain, and misery.
Yeah. Typical Ontario, eh?
100%. Thanks
All
again,
right, well,
Shane.
thanks again, Grant. Yeah, I had a great time and I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks. Thanks for joining us. We are The Ethical Predator, a hunter who values the heritage of hunting the hard way. You can find us in our community at Trad Bowhunter Ethical Predator. Join for free and be a part of a new worldwide movement of traditional bow hunting and support the heritage of the silent art of hunting with traditional gear. The link is in the comments, and I'll see you there. Thanks for listening in. We encourage you to immerse yourself in the art of the stick bow, shoot straight, and walk the path of the ethical predator.